Welcome to the Exam Room Podcast, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hello, I'm Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for watching and downloading in more than 150 countries around the world and making the Exam Room one of the most consumed nutrition podcasts anywhere on the planet today. And today the question is rather simple. Low-carb diets, healthy for the gut, yeah or nah? And there's only one man that can answer that question truly to help us understand. He is a good friend of the show, a good friend of mine. He also happens to be the Pharaoh of fiber, the Duke of Dung, and when it comes to gut health, no song is unsung. From microbes to meals, he'll guide you through, even candidly talking about number two. With science and heart, he makes learning fun. It's Dr. B, and the show's just begun. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. How you doing, man?
Oh man, that was awesome as always. The Duke of Dung, I think, is the one that got me right there.
The Duke of Dung. I
The
feel
Duke
like
of Dung.
we need to get all these T-shirts printed up for you. You can just rotate them. We've given you so many names at this point.
Yeah, and they all involve poop, and I'm not insulted by a single one of them.
Well, I mean, you're the one that kind of started me in this direction, putting a
Yeah,
post up on Instagram talking about big old T-shirt. I take epic dumps. Man, I thought that was great. I mean, own it, own it.
I mean, shouldn't we all? Is this something that we should be squeamish about, or should we be proud of the fact that we have glorious bowel movements? I think we should be proud of that.
If you have just one goal in life, let it be to take an epic dump. All right, so let's talk about epic dumps and low carb diets. Is it possible to take an epic dump on a low carb diet? We'll start with that. Why not?
Right off the bat, here we go, coming in hot. All right. Well, could you have, in theory, an epic dump on a low carb diet? I think that the answer is, in theory, yes. If you were following like a strategically structured low carb diet, but the problem is the vast majority of people, the way that they approach this is not with epic dumps in mind, nor is it with plants in mind. If anything, it's sort of an opportunity to drift away from a plant-based diet, and that's where a lot of the problems show up. So let me start by saying this, that there are variant forms. There's many different forms of low carb diets, and it depends on how strict you want to get with your carbs, right? So some people define it based upon a percentage, where it could be like less than 25%, less than 20%, less than 10% carbs. Or it could be total grams of carbohydrate intake. So like 100 grams, 50 grams, getting quite low. And then we have the carnivore diet, which the carnivore diet is basically no carb, with the exception of perhaps you come across some lactose when you consume dairy products, when you're doing your raw milk thing. But other than that, you're not really coming across carbs. So the issue here, Chuck, is that if you take this concept of low carb, there's parts of it that I agree with. Right? We should be limiting our sugar intake. I agree with that part. But the problem is you say, okay, so I'm going to like restrict all carbs, and I'm going to prioritize fat, and I'm going to prioritize protein. And if you don't have guardrails on those rules, you can get yourself into trouble, because you can overconsume saturated fat, which you get from animal products. And this is where many of the issues subsequently exist with a low carb diet. So I want to fully unpack this together. But the first question that you asked me is, can you have epic dumps on a low carb diet? In theory, yes, because a low carb diet does not require you to eliminate fiber from your diet. But you do have to be thoughtful and strategic if you are going to maintain your fiber intake. And the way that people typically accomplish this is by eliminating things that have a lot of simple carbohydrates while still maintaining the complex carbohydrates like fiber. And so in theory, you could still have epic dumps if you're on a low carb diet, but you're going to be one of the 1%ers that's like really strategic and thoughtful in how you do this. The vast majority of people that are following a low carb diet, they are going to struggle with this issue because they're very high fat and very low in fiber. And that's a setup for constipation.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Let's unpack that, as it were. You go on that traditional low carb route that is high in fat, low in fiber. Let's talk about the lack of diversity in terms of gut bacteria there, and maybe the role that can play in overall gut health.
Yeah, so all of the dietary choices, the evidence is overwhelming and clear at this point. The foods that you choose to eat will have specific families of microbes that will step up in response to those foods. They will grow They will become more powerfully represented within your microbiome. And then whatever comes from that is what comes from that. Now, when we think about fiber, basically what we're creating are microbes that are designed to ferment fiber and create short chain fatty acids. It doesn't matter what nutritional community you come from. I've never actually heard people tell me that butyrate is bad. I've never heard anyone say that. I will hear people argue that you can get butyrate in butter, and I disagree with the premise of what they're trying to get at. But I've never heard people say that short chain fatty acids are inherently bad for us. So this is like one of the rare things that we all agree on. And when you consume a high fiber diet or just fiber in general, you are empowering the microbes that allow you to ferment that fiber and produce those short chain fatty acids. That's what you get. Now, the problem is that when you actually move in a very different direction, you're selecting different microbes. When you go on a high fat diet, fat inherently is hard for the body to process. It takes more time for the body to break down fat. The way in which the body responds to the fat is to release bile, typically from the gallbladder. If you don't have a gallbladder, then it just drifts down into your intestines from your liver. But bile is what helps us to basically unpack the fat and get it absorbed, get it out of your intestines and into your body. And so the bile contains these things called bile salts or bile acids. And these bile acids actually manipulate the microbiome. So what we're learning, Chuck, is that a high-fat diet results in a bile tolerance of microbes. Bile tolerance means that they thrive with higher exposure to bile acids. The problem is those aren't short-chain fatty acid producers. There's something very different. It's a totally different family. And they tend to be ones that we worry about. An example of this is bilophila. So bilophila means bile-loving. Phila is love. Bilophila wadsworthia, which has been associated with ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel disease, and colorectal cancer. And this microbe clearly increases on a high-fat, specifically high-saturated fat diet. So this is the first thing that happens, Chuck, is that you start to drift towards those choices. The second thing that happens is the protein intake in the absence of fiber. When you have a high protein intake, but a low fiber intake, then you are going to disproportionately select for microbes that ferment protein. Protein is fermentable too, not just fiber. But the problem is that what you create when you ferment protein are called branched chain fatty acids. It's not the same as butyrate. It's a different type. And these branched chain fatty acids, they're actually inflammatory. And we have concerns that they're bad for us. They're bad for our gut health. They're bad for our metabolic health. And they can predispose to colorectal cancer. So the point that people need to hear is that no matter what you put in your diet, like if we think about it as 100 different things, you're going to make up those 100 different things out of something. And that representation will ultimately be represented in your microbiome. So it will be a mirror image in a way. It just may take some time for your microbes to catch up. So if you opt for those 100 things to include very little fiber in there, which is the vast majority of Americans, you're going to end up with a microbiome that's not capable of producing short-chain fatty acids, and therefore there's inflammation.
All right. If you have a question for Dr. B, go ahead, drop it in the comments or in the chat. We're going to get to a bunch when we open up the doctor's mailbag. Clearly, we're getting into some, technical territory here today. With that in mind, I wanted to ask you a question going back to constipation for a second. And if you always talk about needing to, float the log down the river, make sure that you're staying hydrated. If somebody's eating a low-carb, high-protein diet, not a lot of fiber there, the risk of constipation, as you said, goes up. But what if, they're, following up that steak with, 8 glasses of water to try to force that log down the river? Would that still help, or are they still looking at some pretty significant constipation issues?
Right. Well, so the issue is, with total clarity, fat slows gut motility. That is pumping the brakes on your intestines. Fat slows gut motility. The thing that moves gut motility forward is fiber. With total clarity, the consumption of fiber accelerates gut motility. There's a number of reasons for this. It's not just that fiber is this plug that works its way through and carries water with it. That is part of the story, and we will talk about that. But it's also the fact that fiber is fermentable by the microbes to produce short-chain fatty acids. And those short-chain fatty acids ultimately impact gut serotonin levels. that impact gut motility. So the problem is when you go low fiber, high fat, you are taking your foot fully off the accelerator and slamming the brake. And that's a setup for constipation. The way in which the fiber, in terms of the water intake, Chuck, which is what you're getting at with this, the way in which the water intake works within this context is that the water stays within the lumen of the intestines, meaning inside the tube. Water stays within the lumen of the intestines because it's bundled up with the fiber. So basically, the fiber is like a sponge, soaking up that water and carrying it all the way through to the finish line. If the fiber is not there, you don't have anything to keep the water inside the lumen of the intestines. So what happens? You absorb it and you pee it out, but it's not in the intestines and it's not helping you to poop.
All right. Let's talk about fiber a little bit more. By the way, I'm loving this new camera. If you guys are listening to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, you have to hop over to YouTube and take a look at Dr. B's slick new setup there. That is a sharp looking camera, my man. And I like the fact that you've got Plant Powered Plus in the background there. By the way,
Boom.
There's a link to get your pre-orders in down below in the show description. Question from Leo at 1212. Can you please talk about recommended daily fiber requirements versus low carb diets? How is it even possible? Are they just ignoring the guidelines there?
Well, I mean, so first of all, let's not let's acknowledge that the fiber problem that we have in America is not a low carb problem specifically. It's an all of America problem. So 95% of Americans are deficient in their fiber intake. Only 5% of Americans are sufficiently consuming fiber. And when I say sufficient, that means like not below the minimal recommended amount. That doesn't mean optimal. Optimal is a different story. We know that about all nutrients, right? There's the amount that is sufficient versus insufficient, and then there's the amount that's optimal, and they're not the same number. So I want to help people ultimately get to an optimal number. Now, here's the question that Leo is getting at. How could you possibly follow a low-carb diet and get sufficient amounts of fiber? Well, it is possible if you're really strategic about things, because what you would do is you would consume foods that are less starchy and less simple carbohydrate rich, meaning they don't have as many simple sugars, but they still have fiber. And those are plant-based foods. So in other words, in order to fulfill the fiber requirements that your body has, you would need to prioritize plant-based food. And you would have to be selective about which plant-based foods you prioritize, because you're effectively saying, I can't have the starchy ones and I can't have the ones that contain sugars. And so as a result of that, you are an elimination diet. So yes, it's possible. You can get enough fiber. But what we also come back to, though, Leo, is that the research shows us that the people with the healthiest guts have the most diverse diet in terms of their plant-based food. So when you say, I'm going to eliminate fruit, and I'm going to eliminate sweet potatoes and all these different things, I'm going to eliminate legumes, you're getting rid of big categories of food. And that is restricting your diet down to just a couple of different things. That's not good for the gut microbiome. So this is where the rub really exists, is like if you're trying to be on a ketogenic diet and achieve ketosis, you could be on a plant-based ketogenic diet, you're still on a restrictive diet. That's the challenge that we have.
Interesting one. So for people that feel like they really don't have much of a choice but to restrict a lot of things from their diet. So say somebody with like IBS, could a low carb, low FODMAP diet improve their symptoms without harming the microbiome balance?
So, Chuck, the evidence when it comes to restrictive dietary patterns, whether it's low carb, whether it is low FODMAP, whether it is gluten-free, the evidence is consistent that anytime you restrict plant-based foods, the microbiome becomes less diverse. That's the issue. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not a place for these things. In fact, my second book, the Fiber Fields Cookbook, I had an entire chapter recommending a low FODMAP diet. So clearly I'm not against it. It's the nuance. It's the way in which we implement a low FODMAP diet. It's the way in which we're smart if we do choose to move towards a more low carb dietary pattern. You know, let me say this, Chuck. I am 100% in agreement with steps that people take to eliminate sugar. and simple carbohydrates like that. And do I think that flour is the enemy? In some cases I do. Right? So the steps that we take to be more thoughtful about sugar and flour and things of this variety, I actually think there's a lot of merit to that. I think it's a smart move. But the problem is that doesn't mean we should be eliminating blueberries.
I agree with that. Blueberries are good. What do you think, honestly? And this is more like just an opinion question. Like, what do you think it's going to take to be able to get people to differentiate simple and complex carbohydrates? Because they're as different as night and day, in my opinion.
Say that again, Chuck? What's it
going to take for people like not to put all carbohydrates in the same bucket? You've got your simple ones and then you've got your complex ones. And to me, they could not be any more different. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, this is the problem, is that we all are guilty on some level of vilifying macronutrients. You say carbs are bad. Well, really? Are all carbs bad, or are some?
Right.
Is all fat bad? I mean, there's parts of our community that think all fat is bad. I don't think that's true. Right? And the same would also be true of protein. Are we going to say that protein is inherently bad when we need protein? It's essential. It's essential. So I think that this is just about like being more nuanced and thoughtful in the way that we discuss these topics.
Amen to that. All right.
As Stephanie says, it's going to take nutrition education.
Amen. Well, that's why we do the show, yo. Come on now. I want to go back to short chain fatty acid stuff. Oscar's got a question. It's kind of a simple one, but maybe you can kind of explain this a little bit more so that people understand. Oscar's wondering at 12:18, would eating short fatty acids improve our health? So can you unpack that and how you actually get those short chain fatty acids?
Where we know that short chain fatty acids provide benefit, that's like completely validated by the science, is when you put fiber into your mouth and you swallow it, the fiber is unchanged, works its way through about 20 feet of intestine, enters the colon. And in the colon, this is where it comes into contact with your gut microbiome. And the microbes go to work and they start unpacking and releasing the fiber, and you get short chain fatty acids. Okay, so that is where the evidence is clear and valid, is through the consumption of fiber, leading to the production of short chain fatty acids in the colon. And that's not the same as putting a short chain fatty acid in your mouth, swallowing it, and then having it get absorbed 1 centimeter past your stomach. Like basically, Chuck, short chain fatty acids, again, short chain fatty acids, these are very simple fats. And because they're so simple, when you ingest them, they get absorbed instantly. So where is the evidence that short chain fatty acid intake by mouth directly provides the same benefit that we receive from fiber? I've yet to see this. So from my perspective, we need to stick to the thing that's evidence-based and not try to create shortcuts to things that are not evidence-based.
All right, let's change gears a little bit and take some wild cards from the doctor's mailbag, because I'm just prepping you right now, man. We got some doozies today. Let's start with Lee, who's looking for a little bit of help. This is on the milder side. Lee says, I'm vegan, been vegan 9 years, eat a lot of whole fiber. Lucky that I love fruits and vegetables, but I get real bloated after meals, scopes up and down. Everything is clear. This is a common thing and something certainly even I have experienced. So for the person who just seems to be chronically bloated but is eating a healthy diet, what might you recommend?
Yeah, so bloating itself is not a diagnosis. Bloating is a symptom. And so what that means is that there is something that would be the diagnosis that's explaining the reason why you're getting the bloating. And there's an entire process to working through and unpacking what that is. The scopes were mentioned and by Lee, and scopes are a part of the diagnostic process, but that doesn't mean that it's the entirety of the diagnostic process. Ultimately, we need to know what is the root cause of this issue. So now I'm going to share some classic examples of things that do cause bloating. The number one for me is constipation. So people will notice when they have to poop, they also get gassy. They also get bloated. And when you mobilize that bowel movement and it leaves your body, guess what else does? The gas. So the point is that many people who get bloating issues, it's that they need to get things moving through. And you could be eating a high fiber plant-based diet and pooping every single day and still be constipated, because the issue is you should be pooping more than once a day for that particular dietary pattern. So that's the first thing that I would start with, Chuck. The second thing is it can be indicative of a microbiome that's struggling. It's struggling to process and digest your food, and so that's something to be aware of. That's where a low FODMAP diet can be helpful in terms of easing that burden on the microbes and then allowing them to build over time. So if people want to deep dive this topic, there's also, by the way, bloating that is ingested. So some people, they belch a lot. Okay, there's a reason why your belch doesn't smell like a fart, because that's not gas that's coming from your colon. Your colon is way on the other end of your intestines, and the gas is not drifting retrograde all the way back up to your stomach so that you can belch it out. That's air that you swallowed. So when you have a belching issue, there's air that's entering into your body in the way that you belch. And there's a condition called aerophagia that can be causing this. So it's important to understand that these are some of the specific reasons that a person can develop gas and bloating. And it's a matter of going through these in a structured way. Is it air that's entering your body? Is it the fermentation of the food that your microbes are struggling? Is it excessive fermentable substrate, excessive fermentable stuff in your diet that is creating more gas? Or is that the bowels are not moving through as efficiently as they need to? So these are the things to think about. And I have a course called Clearing the Air that for people who want to deep dive this topic, that's what the course is for, is to help people understand these different things.
All right. Kim Devlin, you just blew her mind, 1228. How many times ideally should a person be pooping in a day?
It depends on the individual. It depends on their dietary pattern. There are people who poop every other day and they're perfectly fine. And how would I characterize them as being perfectly fine? Well, they have a good, complete evacuation every other day. And in the time in between, they're not suffering with bloating symptoms. They're not struggling to process and digest their food. They're able to eat without any restriction, without any fear that the food is going to cause symptoms or harm to their body, right? That person's in a good spot. So flip side, there are people who are pooping 3 times a day, 5 times a day. And when they go to poop, it's not actually a complete evacuation. It's a partial. They strain, they have to force it out. They feel like they still need to go when they're done. It wasn't really satisfying. And this person is backing up. So even though they technically pooped, it's a technicality. If you have 20% poops, that equals 1 poop. But if you have 20% poops, then you still have 40% of it left inside of you. So this is the key, is that when a person is backing up, they develop the symptoms of constipation. Number 1 being bloating, but there can be other symptoms of constipation. It could include abdominal discomfort. It could include early satiety, meaning that you get full very quickly. You could feel a little bit of queasiness or nausea. You could have fatigue. So many people do when they have constipation. So those are the symptoms, and those would be indicative of inadequate evacuation.
If you're just joining us, you are watching The Numbers of Number 2 with Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. I'm Chuck, your humble host. 1219, Terrible Lotus. Random thing. Here we go. This fits. I've been wondering, if a healthy person is regular and poops every morning, they also stop eating late in the afternoon the day before, is the gut truly empty after they poop, or can we not say?
Well, it's never truly empty, right? Because you always have stuff that's moving through, and it's like a subway tunnel, right? So you have trains that are moving through the subway tunnel, and they're not necessarily, I mean, we don't want them smashing into each other, right? And they can be at different time points and moving at the same time in the same direction. I feel like I'm back in math class as like a 5th grader or 6th grader. So in parallel, same speed, right? Like you could have that. That's the way that it works in a subway tunnel. That's how you prevent those trains from running into each other. That's the way our intestines is. It's one tube. It's one tube. Things are moving through, right? But the point is that when we have stool in the colon and we feel a natural urge to go and poop. We observe that urge. We go to the restroom. We get into a relaxed position. And then our body has a coordinated movement of muscles, some squeezing, some relaxing, some doing a little bit of both at different times, that ultimately results in us fully releasing that bowel movement. So, and that's a complete evacuation.
Alicia, 1230, we can tell a lot about gut health from poop. Quality, frequency, consistency. I think it's a pretty good diagnostic tool, man. If you're taking a look at what's doing down there, what's brewing, you can tell a lot about a person and their lifestyle and how healthy they are. Wouldn't you say, sir? Wouldn't you say?
Oh, totally. 100%. So if you ask me, like, how healthy is my gut and should I get a microbiome test to answer that question? Actually, let's start with the stuff that's free. So what are your gut symptoms? Do you have any gut symptoms? What triggers your gut symptoms? Number 2, what is your bowel movement like? How often are you going? What is the form of the stool? How do you feel when you have the bowel movement? There should be a complete evacuation. It should be satisfying. And then number 3, what is your health history? Because there's certain specific health conditions that are associated with a disturbed microbiome. Between those 3 pieces of information, Chuck, with the stool being sort of the window into your gut microbiome health, between those 3 pieces of information, from my perspective, I have what I need to know about what's going on.
What, just for those who want to do the hardcore exploration, like, what is a microbiome test? What does that consist of? Is that pooping in a bucket and sending it off to a lab? What kind of stuff can we learn about there?
So typically you have like a hammock that sits in your toilet, and you would have your routine bowel movement, and it drops into that hammock. It's caught. And then you would use a kit, and the kit typically will provide some sort of collection spoon where you basically like scoop and you put it into the vial, and then you ship it off. And then they run the microbiome testing from there. So, and the thing about it, like microbiome testing, I find to be very interesting. But if your microbiome test says one thing and your symptoms and your bowel movements and your health history say something very different, which one do you think I'm going to believe? The symptoms, the bowel movement, and the health history. That's what matters. So just remember that expensive tests like microbiome tests, you can get them. They're interesting, but it does not replace the free stuff. The free stuff is always superior.
Right on. This is a question from No True Flags, 1233. What is a complete evacuation? Is that an empty colon? What is your definition of complete, other than you feel pretty complete about life after you do it?
So okay, Chuck, here we go. I'm getting up. We're going to talk about it. What's up, Jennifer? All right. So I'm standing up because I want to show everyone my abdomen here. And now this is a bit backwards for you all because this is my right side. Okay. And when food enters the abdomen, enters the colon, it enters down here, which is called the cecum. And it moves up to where your liver is. This is the ascending colon. And then it goes across, which is the transverse colon. This is the spleen. And at the spleen, there's the splenic flexure where it actually goes down. It's the descending colon into what's called the sigmoid, which is like an S, and then the rectum all the way at the bottom. When you poop, it is mostly the rectum all the way down at the bottom, and it's the sigmoid right here that basically contains the stool that you're going to use in order to poop. And so the things like the cecum, the ascending colon, even the transverse colon, they may contain stool, but that stool is not in a position for you to evacuate it. That's just moving through the conveyor belt. That's just moving down the line in terms of the subway train. But the stool that's in the rectum, that's the stuff that we need to remove. And if there's stool above that, like immediately above that, all continuous, part of this soft but formed sausage, that's what we're trying to evacuate. So when you take that soft but formed sausage and you have a natural release where you feel it leave your body, it doesn't feel like there's any residual stool, you are satisfied, you stand up and you strut out of the restroom. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to strut around. Here, let me, I'm just...
Do that Ric Flair strut, brother.
Yeah, like this. Okay. All right. When you see me walking, if you bump into me at the airport and this is what you see, you know what I just did. You know what I just did.
Right on.
You can give me a high five if you want to. I'll wash my hands. Okay.
Good point there. Always be sure to wash your hands. If you're just joining us, this is Dr. B's Belly. Hi, I'm Chuck, your humble host. That's awesome, dude. That was a solid. That was a power strut right there. That was like, I don't have a care in the world. Life is good strut right there.
Chuck, you know who I'm emulating here.
Oh, I got it immediately. I got it immediately. He who
Yep.
shall remain nameless. Please put your guesses in the chat. All right. Here's a good one. Because boy, this backs up right to what it was.
Little did they know that when they ask what is complete evacuation, number one, I love the question. Number two, you're going to get me up out of my chair so we can talk about this.
That was awesome. That was so good. All right, Rochelle, 1220. Stools can become really large when eating a lot of fiber, I found personally.
Heck yeah.
Stopping up the toilet. What do you do in this instance? I never hear people talk about this. All right, let's talk plumbing.
All right. Well, first of all, large stools. Actually, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name. Someone give me the name. Look this up and drop it into the chat so that Chuck and I can acknowledge it. Because I'm blanking on the name. But basically the grandfather of fiber, he said that when you have large stools, you need small hospitals. And when you have small stools, you need big hospitals. And basically what he was getting at is that when people have a healthy gut microbiome, they're going to have big, healthy bowel movements. And that healthy bowel movement is indicative of what's happening inside the gut. Burkitt, thank you. Dennis Burkitt, he was an Irish guy, and he was working in Africa, studying the people there. And so basically he came back to Ireland, and he said, like, look, like, here we are, not enough fiber, small bowel movements, health issues, right? And over there, these people are eating a lot of fiber. They're having big bowel movements. And actually, like, you know, it's a third world country, so there's different challenges that exist there, and there's like infections and things like this. But at the same time, those people don't have the metabolic problems and many of the other issues that exist in the Western world. So anyway, the point is that when you are eating a microbiome powering diet, that is going to naturally result in larger bowel movements, because, Chuck, 60% of the weight of your stool is microbes. So when the microbes are not multiplying, you get small poops. And when the microbes are multiplying and growing and you're getting more and more of them, you end up in a position where you have big poops. So, and to answer this question, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with a little courtesy flush.
Dude, the courtesy flush, it should be a mandatory thing. It literally should be taught in schools. There is no shame in the courtesy flush game, and frankly, I think less of people who don't courtesy flush. It just needs to happen.
And when you have shared bathrooms, which of course that could be your home, right, your house. When you have shared bathrooms, I mean, just bear in mind that, like, we're all under the impression that our own brand is infallible, that our own brand is like the most wonderful smell in the world. We all think that way, right? You don't sit there and go, "Oh, brand stinks," right? But just bear in mind that, like, to other people, that's a unique microbiome smell that they may not find appealing, and so it's within reason to just like do a quick little spray of something down into the bowl of the toilet to kind of freshen it up. There you go.
Amen to that, sir. Amen to that. And I will also humbly say that I do not think that my stuff smells like lemon drops. It is poo. It smells like it should. That's all I have to say about that. Own up to it. Randy
honest.
Carroll. Randy, well, you know, this show is nothing if not honest, man. We're all about
Randy
putting
Couture?
it out there. Randy Couture, my cousin Randy Carroll. So what can be done for incomplete evacuation? So I don't know, like, are we talking constipation here, do you think? Or somebody that's just like, you get 80% out, but that 20's holding in there for dear life?
Yeah. Well, so first and foremost, we want to create great, big, healthy bowel movements. And we do this with fiber and hydration and movement, like taking a walk. All of these things can ultimately help us to, like, create these big, healthy bowel movements. And what you may find is when you get these big, healthy bowel movements, they become easier to, like, have a complete evacuation. That being said, there are absolutely people who struggle to have a good, complete evacuation. And there's a number of reasons for this. The first is you could have pelvic floor dysfunction. So what that means is that the muscles that exist down at your bottom are not relaxing as naturally as they should be. They might tighten up. They might clamp off. They might clamp off before you're done pooping. And that pelvic floor dysfunction causes you to be unable to fully empty your bowels. So I like to think of it, Chuck, as like if you have a bathtub, you add water to the bathtub, and then at some point you're going to want to empty that bathtub. There's only one way out. And so you have to open the drain if you want to empty the bathtub. So in this case, what we're saying is the drain is closing before you're fully emptying the bathtub. So there's still some water left. So the way that we approach that issue, Chuck, is to work with a pelvic therapist. That's a pelvic floor issue. The other thing that's possible is something called a rectocele. And a rectocele is where the rectum is actually sort of bowing out when you go to poop. And that bowing out, you create a pocket, and it can be a place where things can get hung up. So, and that actually, believe it or not, has to do with the ligaments that actually hold the vaginal wall up. This is something that can also be diagnosed with your doctor. There are tests that can help us to understand that.
Rectocele. That sounds like something you would find at Costco. Like, Rectocele on sale. Like, I don't know why.
Don't buy it. If it's on sale, don't buy it. I don't care how cheap it is at Costco. You don't need that. You don't need that.
Oh, man. Okay. Oh, boy. Alicia is oversharing in the chat, and I love it. Boy, I find that changing my position on the toilet, lifting my leg and crossing my legs and my ankles to better angle my body to completely and effortlessly, easy for me to say, completely and effortlessly eliminating and evacuating the stool. It moves so much easier, and it's life-changing, seriously. So that's interesting. You want to give that one a whirl since you were doing body demos earlier today?
Well, I mean, first of all, I can't put my legs behind my head, so I'm not sure. I'm not a contortionist. I'm like literally the least flexible person on the planet. So, and I want to say, Chuck, that like I'm all for yoga. And I'm also for great bowel movements, but not necessarily yoga while you're doing the bowel movement. Okay. These are separate things and they have their own place and time. So I'm quite sure that's not what Alicia meant. So thank you, Alicia, for bearing with me here. I hope you don't mind. The key here, Chuck, you take a deep breath. I'll handle this one for a moment.
Please.
All right.
I'm done.
So, for people who are listening, you should be checking out the YouTube because Chuck is losing his mind over there. You might have to go on mute for a second.
Just seeing somebody with their legs behind their head on the toilet. It's just going everywhere. It's horrible.
Chuck, we don't need the visual, Chuck. Jeez, buddy. Jeez. All right, Chuck. All right, you simmer down. All right, let me talk about. Let me bring this back to being professional over here. Okay. So we're gonna bring it back to being professional and talk evidence-based, which is that here's what you do. Here's the key. We were not meant to sit on the toilet like it's a throne. We call it a throne. It shouldn't be a throne. We were meant to squat. All right. And so what that means is when you sit on the toilet, it really helps if you have some sort of stool or some sort of place to prop your feet. Because then what you can do is you can put your knees above your hips, and once you get your knees above your hips, you're down into more of a squatted position. So it's not 90 degrees from your spine to your leg. Okay, it's not 90 degrees. You're not like this. Now you're more like this in that position where you got your knees up high, and you are more squatted, and that helps to basically open up the muscles that are in the pelvic floor. Which, Chuck, you okay?
I'm getting there slowly but surely, brother. The image is burned into my head, man.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the position. You don't try to put your legs behind your head. Just try to get your knees higher than your hips. That will suffice. You don't have to be super flexible to make this work.
Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. Ooh. I don't know where to take the show from here, dude.
Someone ask a question. Bail this guy out. Someone ask a question.
You're not going to top that. I mean, I could ask you about, Inus's question about legumes. Do you think legumes are underrepresented? I eat at least 100 to 150 grams of dry into cooked legumes every day. Wouldn't that be great for everyone?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Legumes to me are the best, and it breaks my heart when I see them being disparaged inappropriately. These are health foods. Like, these are about as healthy as they get. And the problem is that the manifestation of symptoms doesn't mean that the legume is bad. It means that your gut hasn't been consuming enough. And so you're struggling to process and digest this food. You have to understand, the average person in America today, Chuck, consumes about 6 pounds of legumes per year. So when you go and you divide that out over 52 weeks, we're talking about a minuscule amount of legumes over the course of a year. In fact, this number is less than it was just a generation ago. It used to be 8 pounds. So we cut it down by 25%. And the problem is, as we discussed at the beginning of this entire podcast episode, Chuck, when you restrict yourself, when you stop consuming specific things, when you underrepresent things in your diet, the result is that your body will struggle to process and digest those foods because your body wasn't adapted and built for that. That's the problem. So what we need to do is take that 6 pounds per year. Okay, cool. That's our starting point. I was probably less than that 15 years ago. I was probably 3 pounds. And we're going to, and they were baked beans. So that was the only thing when I was eating hot dogs, baked beans. So, and we're going to start to gently move them up. So you're not trying to do it all at once. You're not going straight to the 5-bean chili. But what you are is you're slowly just starting to lean into this and increase your legume intake. And over time, you'll find that it will improve. Hey, Chuck, Lee just asked what my website is. And so is it okay if I do a quick plug for that?
I 100% was going to wrap everything up with that, seeing Lee's. But yeah, man, let's talk about it. Let's talk about your website. Let's talk about the Gut Health Collective. Let's break all that stuff down.
Cool. All right. So this is an invitation to everyone who's here that if you come to my website, you're going to find the information that you're looking for. And that includes my courses, where you can learn more about the different courses that I offer. One, we talked about Clearing the Air, which is my gas and bloating course. I also have one, Conversations about Constipation, all about constipation. I have one about acid reflux called Head to Head with Heartburn. I also have a FODMAP course, a histamine course, a food intolerance course. I have a master class, which is my biggest and best one. So those are all options. But also, imagine that you're not quite ready to take a course. No problem. Come to my website. I have a free quiz. You fill out the quiz, you answer questions that are specific to you. Based upon those questions, I'm going to identify what your gut type is and send you an email. And that email is going to explain what is going on and what are some of the things and strategies that you can use to improve your gut health and get it working the way that it's supposed to. Okay? So that's a completely free resource. I also have my email list. My email list is basically a Substack that I don't charge for. It's completely free. And it's where I love to communicate the most. I get to talk to people. But if you want to get and hang out with me and do this kind of thing that we're doing right now, but actually be the one asking the questions. So like basically you step in the Chuck's seat and get to be the one laughing at me while I crack silly jokes. If you want to be that person, we all aspire to be someone someday, right, Chuck?
Hey, man, there are worse people to be.
If you want to be Chuck Carroll, then you can come and join the Gut Health Collective, which is my private community, where we routinely have live Q&A sessions. And sometimes they're all super fun, but sometimes they're unique. So like, here's an example, Chuck. Yesterday, gosh, I should have had this with me. Yesterday, we made sauerkraut in the Gut Health Collective.
Nice.
So, and I was the teacher. So I did something I'd never done before. I brought people into my kitchen and I walked them through step by step, the different steps to create sauerkraut. It took us 30 minutes. And you can create multiple different batches. So I had 2 batches. I had one that's classic sauerkraut. And then I have a second batch that's garlic kraut. So anyway, so these are all things. So if you come to theguthealthmd.com, this is the short answer. Sorry, Lee, it took me so long to get to this. If you come to theguthealthmd.com, you'll find all of this. You'll find my courses. You'll find my private community, the Gut Health Collective. And you'll also find my free resources, such as my email list and my quiz.
And we've got a link to the website in the description for you right now. Man, this has been a lot of fun today. Thank you so much for painting such a wonderful
We all needed a laugh, Chuck. We all needed a laugh.
That was, for the love of Pearl, maybe my favorite moment on the show with you ever. That was just fantastic. Fantastic. So thank you so much, man. Appreciate you. By the way, randomly, Prime Day deal. I'm not even sure that you're aware of this. Your original book, Fiber Fueled, on sale, hard copy right now. $9.99. I mean, that's a bargain.
Oh, that's a great deal. That's for the hardcover?
For yes, sir.
I did not know that. Yeah, so $9.99 is that's a great deal for the hardcover fiber field. If you haven't read that book, go grab a copy. You're never going to beat that price. I might buy some myself because I need those to give out from time to time. And also 38 Terra is on sale right now on Amazon. Nice. So for those of you who didn't know, we're on sale for Prime Day, 20% off single pouches of 38 Terra. So there's an opportunity for people to go and grab that if you're interested in trying it. And last but not least, I'm really excited about my new book, Plant Powered Plus, and it's coming out January 13th. Now is the time to pre-order, and then you can pick up the pre-order incentives at my website when you roll through there. So go and grab pre-order plus. Steven says, I got the first two, third is pre-ordered. Steven, you're the man. Appreciate you.
You the man too, Dr. B. I appreciate you. I think we all do. So this sip is for you, my friend. I greatly appreciate your time, as always, joining us, having a laugh, raising our health IQs, talking about poo. Man, it just doesn't get any better than this. Honest to goodness.
Tofu Tuesday says you have to buy your own book. Yeah, isn't that? maybe when I become, I guess I'll know I made it when I have unlimited books for free. But no, I have to buy my own book. I don't have an unlimited supply. I could take you into the inner workings of what happens with publishers, and I love my publisher. They're wonderful people. Penguin Random House, Avery, my editor, Lucia, who is the absolute best. I'm so grateful for them. But I do, in fact, have to buy my book. So if you come to my house and I hand you a copy and I sign it, you know that I bought it probably on Amazon, probably when it was on sale.
See, Dr. B's just like us. He's just like us, always looking for a good deal. Hey, I appreciate you, my friend. This has been awesome.
Thanks, Chuck.
All right, man. And for everybody here at the Physicians Committee, I am Chuck Carroll. Thanks so very much for watching and raising your health IQs and lowering your maturity level with us for an hour. We'll talk to you next time, but until then, keep it plant-based.
Still going.
Yeah, we are.
We're live.
I'm waiting on that old stream to end there.
Keep it plant-based. Like, keep it plant-based, people.
Keep it
plant-based.
Yeah, there's